Good morning. Wow, that was a very enthusiastic good morning for 8 a.m. You guys are good. Based on the number of people who signed up to attend this session, it actually looks like it's going to be one of the most popular and well-attended sessions of the conference, which I didn't expect with it being at 8 a.m. So that is fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us bright and early. Topic today, of course, is what's new in reporting services in SQL Server 2016. How many of you, quick show of hands, have used reporting services before, at least a little bit? OK, most of you. Great. People actually read the abstract. So this is definitely targeted at people who have used reporting services before, at least somewhat familiar with it, so that we can focus on what's new rather than providing a one-on-one on everything, a 101 on everything that reporting services can do. So for those folks just trickling in, there's still a few more seats. But we are going to get going because it is 8 a.m. and we have a lot of content for you, and it's not that long of a session. For the agenda today, what we wanted to do is, before we dive into the specific new features in 2016, to provide a little bit of a longer-term view. How does this fit into our vision for BI? Our vision for BI that spans not only on-premises BI, but as well as cloud BI with Power BI. And how does reporting services fit into that picture? We get a lot of questions about customers asking for functionality that's available in the cloud, but they want it on-premises, or vice versa. Or they might be doing on-premises today and thinking about moving to the cloud, maybe as regulations or company policy changes over the next few years, and they want to have something that is on-premises today but cloud-ready. So we'll try and address a number of those topics with our roadmap. Again, due to time constraints, we could probably do a whole session on the roadmap, but we'll probably just spend about 5 minutes on it. But at least gives you some good context before we then dive into specifically what are the new features that are actually in preview already with 2016, and that you can go and try today, and that will be available in the final version a little bit later this year with the 2016 official release. We're going to go through the slides pretty quickly in this particular session because I want to spend more time actually showing you the features in the demo rather than just me talking at slides forever. And then I will ask you, again, just due to the 50-minute session that we have, to hold your questions to the end. I know it's hard because you have a lot of good questions, but just queue them up at the end, and that way we leave a good amount of time at the end to address your questions. And they might have been addressed in the course of the presentation as well. Just a quick intro on me. My name is Ricardo Muti. I'm a program manager on the business intelligence team at Microsoft, specifically focusing on reporting services. My brief history is that I've been at Microsoft for about 5-6 years. I ironically originally joined the reporting services team. That was the team that hired me. I thought I was going to go work on reporting services. But the reporting services engineering team has actually been behind a lot of the different BI features and products, some of which have not always been branded reporting services. So it was the reporting services team who built Power View. It was the reporting services team who built a lot of the reporting and visualization inside Power BI. So I, immediately after being hired, was put on a project that he couldn't really tell me about during the interview, which ended up being Power View. So how many people are familiar with Power View? Yeah, quite a lot of you as well. OK, so if you use Power View, I worked on the version 1 of that product. Where we took that after that is we wanted to take it from a Silverlight-based product to an HTML5-based product that worked across different browsers and mobile devices. And so we evolved it to HTML5. There's also the whole cloud shift that was happening, so we wanted to have a cloud service that people could subscribe to. And so I worked on a lot of the basic evolution of Power View and the interactive reporting and the integration of that into new offerings like Power BI Desktop and the Power BI Cloud Service. However, just about not quite a year ago, but maybe about 8 or 9 months ago, I changed focus to actually, for the first time at Microsoft, really work on what we traditionally think of as reporting services to try and revitalize that product and bring our roadmap to our on-premises BI offering for those customers who need something that they can deploy on a server on their own premises. So there's some information there on how you can keep in touch with me. I blog, as well as my colleague Chris Finland, who I'll invite up at the end of the session to field some questions on the reporting services team blog. And so there's a quick, short URL you can get to our blog and just keep in the know about all the news that's coming out with the new release. So with that, let's talk a little bit about the broader vision for business intelligence, reporting, data visualization, that whole space at Microsoft. The message that I would want you to come away with is that over the years, reporting and data visualization and these kind of needs have gotten quite a lot more varied, quite a lot more complex. Years ago, when somebody told you that they needed a report or they wanted a report, they almost certainly meant something like this. This is kind of a direct translation of what you traditionally think of as a report, even before like computers. It's a document that's printed on pieces of paper. The direct equivalent of that is really the traditional form of a report, a paginated document. It's a document that, as its content grows, it spills over from one page to the next. The more data you have, the more pages it generates. It's very conducive to something that you can email around, you can export to a very precisely formatted document like a PDF or a Word document that you can actually print to physical paper, because of course people still do that, no matter how much people predict the death of printing. So the first wave of business intelligence offerings, the traditional enterprise reporting offerings, were really engines to generate these kinds of documents. You would plug in parameters, you would then have it go and run a query. You've got parameters, you've got data, you've got all these inputs, but then it goes and processes it against a document template and spits out pages. And then you can go and use the pages and export, print, interact, do whatever you want. So that's the traditional form of document. Reporting services was really built over a decade ago to play in this space, to be an enterprise reporting platform like the other ones that were out there. And it very quickly captured a lot of market share because it was a very powerful, extensible platform. And so we have a huge base of customers who are using reporting services for this sort of workload. But this, while this was the 90% workload years ago, is no longer, it's still a meaningful part of things that customers need to do. Customers run their business on these sort of reports, or their operations in many cases. But it's just one of the workloads that customers need to address with BI and with reporting. So another example would be more business data analyst-driven so-called self-service BI. Excel did self-service BI before it was called self-service BI. You had financial analysts wanting to do financial reports like this. And this is not something that you would have IT go and spend weeks building a report, and then you'd run the same report every week, just almost completely automated. This is something, there's a lot of manual work, there's a lot of what-if scenarios, playing with variables. And for that kind of stuff and financial modeling and analysis, you really can't beat the power of a spreadsheet. And so that's part of the reason why, especially for financial analysis, Excel has become the de facto standard tool. So spreadsheets actually play quite a big role in the set of BI workloads. But what we've seen over the last few years in particular is that people are demanding, we're used to smartphones and tablets where we can touch on things and things happen, and things are always very fluid and interactive. And there's a more modern experience that we expect from data visualization. The other thing is that Excel, being a spreadsheet tool, has about 1,000 features in it. And it still has to be a top-notch spreadsheet tool. There's something to be said for a tool that does something more specific, or an app that does something more specific, and does it very well. And so there's emerged this new category of tools that are more single-purpose. They're focused on self-service, business data analyst-driven, free-form data exploration, and interactive data visualization. So instead of me creating a spreadsheet, I add a chart, then I go get some data, then I go do workbook calculations, then I go bind things. First thing I do is I go and connect to data, because we know that that's exactly what you're going to want to do. And then you go and just start exploring the data. Maybe you're not even sure what kind of chart or what kind of report you want to create yet. You just start dragging the data onto the canvas, and the program does something intelligent. If you drag date data, it might give you a time series line chart. If you drag a geographic field, it might give you a map. It helps you explore and understand the data and discover insights in the data. And at the end of the day, when you've discovered the answer to your business question, you may create a report, or you may just say, I've got the answer to my question, I'm going to email it off to somebody, and I'm going to just discard it. So it is a data question and answer tool as much as it is a report creation tool. But this is something that we found everybody who's using these tools, like Power View, Power BI Desktop, it's not as if they've completely replaced Excel. So they're complementary to Excel. And finally, the interesting thing that's happened over the last few years is the shift toward mobile computing. We're doing less on PCs and more on smartphones and tablets. And no matter how much every vendor tells you that they have a mobile BI solution, actually try it. Actually use it day to day. Take something, a report that was designed like the previous one that I showed you. Take something like this, designed for a desktop, and with no smarts whatsoever, try it on a phone in portrait orientation. And if you've ever tried it, you probably already know that it's not a particularly ideal experience. It's kind of cumbersome. You can tell when something was not designed in mobile first. And so there is this opportunity to create, now knowing when you build these reports that people are going to want to consume them, especially executives, mobile workers, on their phones and tablets, to create something with a mobile-first mindset that is designed from the outset to not only work on a phone, but really deliver a great experience on a phone and tablet in all sorts of screen shapes, orientations, as you rotate the screen, and we'll see what that looks like. Here, what we've done is we've acquired a company called DataZen. You might have heard of them not quite a year ago again. So again, all this stuff's happening very quickly. It's only been a few months. But we acquired DataZen. And DataZen has, we really feel like, one of the best experiences for interactive BI on a mobile device. And I'll show it to you. Now, these are all good, the fact that we have these different report types and these different tools that really optimize for these different scenarios. Again, I would encourage on you a dose of skepticism. Whenever anybody says that they can build a tool that does all of these things extremely well, we and the industry have yet to see such a tool. Because while you can print from from Power BI Desktop or for some of the competitive tools in that space, yes, you can print the report. And then for some needs, that might be just fine. But if you really need to produce a pixel-perfect paginated document with the level of control that you get from enterprise reporting products, they don't offer that because it's not really what the problem that sort of app was built to solve. Similarly, like if you have an enterprise reporting product and they say they have interactivity, well, yes, in reporting services you can click and drill through to another report, but it was not designed to be a self-service, fluid, interactive tool. So these things have their different strengths and weaknesses, and we think that that's a good thing. But one of the challenges is that these things right now that we have either built as Microsoft or recently acquired, they're not integrated into one seamless platform. And that's one feedback that we've heard from customers and we want to address with our roadmap. The other thing that we've heard, and that makes total sense, is that each of these things was either born as a on-premises server platform or a cloud service. And so you may need to do a bunch of these different things, but for each workload, you're kind of tied to you must deploy a server product on premises, or you must subscribe to this cloud service. So for example, we have customers doing reporting services reports, document generation, that kind of stuff. They love the platform, but they now run a hosted service for their clients, and they run it in a data center in the cloud. And they say, hey, it would really reduce our costs and maintenance and just make things simpler and better for us if we could subscribe to this as an Azure cloud service, or if it were part of Power BI, for example. And then we get people, probably more people, this is the more limiting issue, of people wanting the opposite. They're saying, I love Power BI Desktop. It's like the best tool on the market for me to go and explore my data. It's a free tool for all my users to go download, but I need somewhere for them to publish these reports and share it with other users in the organization, and I can't use a cloud service just due to regulatory reasons, company policy, whatever. Well, there is no on-prem solution to that yet. We acquired DataZen, but again, DataZen is a separate server platform from reporting services, so you have to deploy these two servers. Your users have to go to two different places. So how do we solve all these problems, decouple these things, integrate them more, give you more choice into on-premises versus cloud? And here's how we're going to do that. Those are the different report types that we talked about. We have these tools that are evolving and maturing nicely to offer you a lot more functionality to build these things. What we're going to do is just decouple them from where you deploy them. So we're going to have two platforms, one on premises and one in the cloud, with symmetric capabilities in terms of these reports. So if you want to build a Power BI Desktop report, you can publish it to the Power BI Cloud service today. Some point in the future, you'll be able to take a traditional reporting services report and publish it up there as well and organize it in the same place. Your users can all go to one place. If you need something on premises, you today can publish your reporting services reports there. Your DataZen reports, you no longer will need a separate server. Those are integrated now as mobile reports in reporting services, and you can publish those on premises to the same server. Your users can go to one web portal. And sometime after SQL Server 2016, you'll be able to take Power BI desktop reports and publish them to reporting services as well. Now, that last point is effectively the next step in our self-service BI story for on-premises. You explore your data and build reports in Power BI desktop, and you publish it to reporting services on-premises, and users in the near future will be able to view and interact with those reports in a browser. That is also something that you can view as the successor to what we started with Power View. This is the next generation of that. When users want to go consume it, they just go to the web portal for either Power BI or for reporting services. We've dramatically overhauled the one for reporting services, as you'll see. And then if they're on their mobile device, they have one mobile app. We have one for each major mobile platform, Windows, Android, and iOS. Whatever device they're using, they install the Power BI mobile app, and that same mobile app will be able to access their content from the cloud in Power BI or their reports from reporting services on-premises as well, starting with the new mobile reports that we're adding. So that's the somewhat longer-term view. The first step that we're taking towards that is what we're doing in this initial release of SQL Server 2016. And that is Data Zen, rather than being a separate product, separate server, separate mobile apps that you have to use, a separate web portal, is going to be seamlessly integrated into reporting services. You use the next version of Data Zen Publisher, which is now called Mobile Report Publisher, to build these mobile reports as another option to building the traditional reports. And then you can publish them to your same reporting services server, and you can view them in the web browser, or you could be using the new mobile app in Power BI mobile app to consume that content. So that's what we're doing in 2016. So with that, I want to shift gears and just talk about specifically what else is new in SQL Server 2016. We'll give you an overview of the new features. We'd like to say that with reporting services, as I said, it's over a decade old. It's a very mature enterprise reporting platform. It's got tons of capabilities. We'd like to say that when we built it, we really set the standard for what a modern enterprise reporting platform looked like. At the time, you could do things like extend the platform with .NET code, which was much more modern than the competitors at the time. And it's for reasons like that, for having this most modern enterprise reporting platform, that we gained so much adoption. What we'd like to do is do that again. So we'd like to make reporting services the modern enterprise reporting platform. The way we're doing that is by taking the traditional paginated reports, which are by no means, like, make no mistake, they're not going away with the addition of any of these new workloads. As I said, companies still run business processes on these things. And we're going to dramatically overhaul and modernize them. And we've actually done a lot of that already, and I'll show it to you. You'll be able to design these really beautiful, modern-looking paginated reports with all of the new tools that we've given you, as well as new features for these reports as well. Then we're expanding the platform into handling multiple workloads, multiple report types, with the addition first of these mobile reports built on the Data Zen technology. And finally, you've got this brand new web portal that is kind of the front door for all your users to go and access both of these types of reports organized in one place. For the traditional paginated reports, all of the chart and gauge styles, they look very dated given that they haven't been updated in 10 years. A lot of that is really true of all the enterprise reporting platforms out there. But we've definitely given ours a major overhaul, and I think you'll be pretty pleased with what the visuals look like with a lot less effort than before. We've added two new chart types, tree map and sunburst chart. They're ideal for visualizing hierarchical information, and they're very similar to the ones that you'll find in Power BI. So there's a nice symmetry going on there. We've updated the tools that you've used to build these reports. If you're using Report Builder, you'll find a modern version of that. If you're using Visual Studio, you can now use the latest version of Visual Studio. How many of you in the room would consider yourselves developers or BI developers? Like, you write code and reports, do stuff like that? Quite a lot of you, actually. So if you've ever written code in a reporting services report before, or you've even written an extension for the server platform, you might have encountered the limitation that you have to write code in .NET 3.5. You can't use any version of .NET like 4.0 or later from the last several years. And I'm glad to say that we've finally addressed that. So you can now use .NET 4 code. You can use .NET 4.6 code. You can use the latest features in the .NET framework. And finally, printing is something that we've modernized. We'll take a look at it, and we'll take a look at that during the demo. If you've built reporting services reports before and you've built parameters in your reports, these are really the key to making the reports more dynamic, accept more input from the user, and get different data, filter things differently, display things differently. But the challenge was that you were so limited in how you could position the parameters themselves, which is frustrating because the whole report, you have so much control over how you lay out everything. But just the parameters area at the top, you could control the order of the parameters, but then reporting services would just lay it out the way it lays it out. You couldn't really control precisely where you wanted each parameter. And you couldn't have more than 2 columns of parameters, which, again, remember at the time, it was like screens were 800 by 800, or if you had a 1024 screen, you were really, really leading edge. So now, of course, we have these wider screens. There's a lot of wasted space, and there's a lot more opportunity to lay out the parameters across more columns. So we've given you the ability to do that. The way to think about this is before you had the ability to control the order of parameters, and now you have the ability to just directly control the position of each parameter. I'll show you a demo of that as well. You've always had the ability to export reports to multiple formats, including Word and Excel. We've now added PowerPoint, which makes it a lot easier compared to, say, grabbing screen clippings of your report and dumping it in PowerPoint. Now you have a couple of clicks. You're going to have a good starting point for a PowerPoint presentation. And this one is an interesting hybrid feature, whereas we find some customers are using reporting services. They have tons of investments in reporting services and reports on premises. But they've also started to use Power BI. And one of the cool features in Power BI specifically is the dashboards in Power BI, where you can pin things from different reports. You can aggregate them all in one place. So on this one pane of glass, so to speak, you can monitor all sorts of business metrics and trends that come from all sorts of different reports. It's great, but to get your metrics and trends, or your charts, your gauges that you have in your reporting services reports up there, you were faced with, well, I guess I got to rebuild all of this stuff in Power BI, or I've got to somehow migrate all of these reports to the cloud overnight. You don't need to do any of that. So what we've enabled is you can keep the reports on premises where they are, just open them up in reporting services. You can pick a particular chart or gauge or map or image and just pin that individual element to Power BI. And reporting services on a schedule will run your report and make sure your dashboard's always up to date, showing you the latest data. We'll take a look at that feature as well. And finally, the most major addition is we've added a whole new report type. As I said, we've added mobile reports. They're based on the DataZen technology. We'll take a look at the mobile report publisher application that lets you build them. But it's very easy to build these mobile reports. You just drag and drop from a gallery of different types of charts and visualizations onto a canvas with a nice grid to align everything, and you can create these beautiful visualizations. One of the really nice features is that you can get started doing that before you've even done all the prep work of the data pipeline. So you might have, if you're responsible for creating dashboards for other people, be it your boss, a manager, an executive, they'll say something like, I want a dashboard that has this on it. And you don't really necessarily know exactly what they're expecting to see when they say that. And you might spend a lot of time prepping the data and creating a prototype of the dashboard, and then you show it to them, and they say, oh, no, that's not really what I want. So this helps you short-circuit that by saying, well, you can sort of define your design-first layout of your dashboard, show it to the customer, or show it to your boss, show it to this manager, and say, is this the sort of dashboard that you want? And if they say yes, then you know that you're spending time wisely doing all the data prep, writing the queries, and so on. Whereas if they say no, then you can kind of just sit down with them and prototype, well, what if we put this over here? What if we did more of this type of layout? We did more of a tabular layout, scorecard instead of a chart, or whatnot. You can do that very, very quickly without having the data prep done. Of course, once you know what you want, you can hook this up to reporting services now. The same shared data sets that you have in reporting services that you're using for your existing reports, you can now reuse all that work and reuse those data sets in these mobile reports as well. And the key feature that makes this so optimized for the mobile devices is that you can define alternative layouts. So you could define a traditional landscape widescreen layout for PCs, but you can define an alternative layout for when people are viewing it on a tablet in portrait mode and on a smartphone in portrait mode. And we'll take a look at what that looks like. Once you've built these mobile reports, your users are going to be using either the mobile web browser or the native mobile app with the Power BI mobile app on their mobile device, and they can go and access all of these mobile reports that you've created, as well as anything that they have in Power BI as well. And the data would automatically be kept up to date based on a schedule that you're able to control. And one of the really nice features is actually that even when you're disconnected, you can have data cached so that you can interact with reports even when you don't have network connectivity on your device. And finally, as I said, tying this all up, the classic report manager web portal that you're probably familiar with, that has gone away, and we have a brand new web portal. It's built from the ground up on HTML5. So browser support that was a challenge with reporting services in the past, you'll find that we support now Edge, Internet Explorer 10 and later, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, and we've invested in parity across those browsers. So there isn't like, some of those are not tier 3 browsers. You get a first-class experience across all of those browsers. So with that, let me turn to a demo. So starting with a bit of nostalgia, I guess, this is what Report Builder looks like as far as you're probably familiar with. This is actually Report Builder 2014. But really, Report Builder has not had an update since 2007 in terms of its basic shell. So this is what it looked like. And more to the point, this is one of the AdventureWorks sample reports that we shipped as recently as 2012. But again, this dates back to earlier. This is the sort of style of data visualization that was popular probably about 10 years ago. And that, again, you're probably thinking of reporting services as creating these sorts of charts by default. What I'll show you now is the new version of Report Builder. We have updated the Report Builder application itself, as well as all of the styles of the charts and gauges, as I said. So just by, if I were to just recreate this report, and actually that's exactly what I did, I just took this report and said, I'm going to delete these charts, I'm going to start with the data, and then I'm going to recreate the charts just using the wizards and the defaults in reporting services now. And here's what that looks like today. That's a new, modern AdventureWorks report created in 2016. So you'll see that the chart palette is exactly the same as the one in Power BI. All of the KPIs have been modernized. They're more of a flat, modern style. The charts look modern as well. We'll take a look at this in more detail, really just how easy this is. The table style has been slimmed down. So the idea behind these modern data visualization styles is that all of the metadata and stuff that's not the data should really be subtle and almost kind of fade into the background, and your data is really what should pop off the screen. So hopefully you can see that here in this particular mockup. Let's look at exactly how that works. So here I'm just going to open another report that's got some data in it. So I've just got a data source in here and a data set. If I were to just go and insert a chart here, I'll use the chart wizard. I'll pick my data set. I'll choose a column chart. And actually, let me just run my zooming tool here. It looks like it stopped running. So I can zoom in there. Now I'm going to drag product category to the categories. I'm going to put a year on my legend, and I'm going to put sales on my value. So there's my definition of my chart. And what the wizard will give me now is a choice of wonderfully dated styles for my chart. So I can use the ocean theme, the forest theme. There is apparently one universally agreed upon standard corporate theme. And then, of course, my personal favorite, the rich mahogany theme. So we'll go with the mahogany theme, my personal favorite. And this is what a chart looked like as recently as a couple years ago when you created it in reporting services. Now let's go and create a gauge. I'll insert a gauge here. And let's grab something like this one here. Yeah, so that's what a gauge looked like in 2014. Very bubbly, looks like the oil pressure gauge on a Pontiac. Now, if I want to create gauges, actually on the note of data visualization, are not necessarily a data visualization best practices. If any of you are data viz geeks, you know that already. They're much maligned, kind of in the same category as a pie chart in some cases. One of the ones that I prefer, and that's also a well-loved visualization, is the bullet graph. Really contains and conveys a lot of information in one dense visualization. But what was called a bullet graph in reporting services before, I think we would argue, is not a proper bullet graph. So let's take a look at all these now in 2016. I'm going to go here and just going to go back to my design mode, and I'm going to design a new report. Just going to hide some of these panes here just so you can see a little bit more content. I'm going to do the exact same thing. Actually, let me just grab my data. OK. insert a chart. I'm going to use my chart wizard, the exact same one, grab my data set. I'm going to choose a column chart again, grab the exact same field, category, year, and sales. And I'll click Next. And that is now a preview of the chart that it's going to give me. It looks like a modern chart that you'd see in Power BI. So that is what charts look like now in reporting services. If I were to insert a gauge, let's make a little bit more space here. I'll just insert a gauge, and I'll choose something like this one here. And there you go. That's what you get by default. That is a modern gauge. Again, aligns nicely with the ones that you'll see in Power BI. And finally, our friend the bullet graph. Let's go and insert a bullet graph. And that is an actual proper bullet graph. We actually took all of the specifications for how wide things should be, the exact color and shades of gray that things should be, from the official bullet graph spec, which is a paper that's publicly available that you can go and get. So a lot more modern, a lot more aligned with Power BI, and a lot more in line just with proper data visualization best practices. So with this, it's going to be, you could always, with reporting services, tweak the charts and gauges that it gave you so that they looked modern, but it was just a lot of time and effort that you no longer need to spend. You're going to get really beautifully modern-looking charts and gauges like these by default. I'm going to switch over to another report that I created. This one actually has a color bullet graph. And this is a report with 3 parameters in it. So you'll see that I have employee, start date, and end date here as 3 parameters into the report. The challenge before was when you run this report, that this is probably not really what I want, right? Because you've got employee over here, and then you've got from and to, which is a date range on this sort of diagonal here. The reason why it does that is I just define the order of parameters, and then what reporting services does is it says I have 2 columns, and I'm going to lay them out left to right, and then going to the next line in kind of left to right reading order. So it didn't have a 3rd column to go to, and it kind of just enforces that layout. So OK, no problem. Let me go fix that. I'll go back to the design mode. Except you can see what I mean now, because the whole parameter pane went away. It's a purely runtime experience. You never had a design time experience for report parameters. So what I've done just for the demo is hidden something that you'll see by default in the actual product, which is, for the first time ever, the parameters pane as a design time experience. And now it's really easy. Drag and drop. I put from here. I put to here. I put employee there. And I go and run it. And now I've got things laid out the way I want. Really easy. By the way, something that I couldn't have done before, if for whatever reason I wanted employee up here, because that example might have seemed trivial, if I put from and to down here, this is something that it never would have let me done before, because in that left to right snaking layout, it would not have let me to keep that cell empty. It would have insisted upon filling it. Now, of course, though, I still have a lot more screen real estate here. So maybe what I want to do is not have 2 rows at all. I'll just insert another column to the right. I'll put from here, from here and to here, run the report. And now I've just got 3 parameters in one row along the top, taking less precious vertical screen real estate, especially on today's wider screens. If I just switch ahead to another version of this report that I created, here's an example of really how far you can take this. You can add quite a number of parameters. You can add 4, 5, 6 columns. You can even include spaces between different groups of parameters. So here I kind of enforce that I've got the logical pairing of this is a date range, and these are another set of parameters. OK? So now every time I show parameters, people go and then ask about a number of other enhancements that we'd love to make to parameters. I could rattle off 10 or 20 that we definitely want to go do. So I would stress that I would look at this as a beginning. It's the first investment that we've made in parameters in many years. It was the #1 customer complaint about parameters, and probably up there on the list of complaints about reporting services, period. And we've addressed it with this simple incremental enhancement. We'd like to make a number of others. People ask about autocomplete in parameters. People ask about tree view parameters or date range parameters. We'd definitely like to take this further. And the feedback that we get from you helps us prioritize which thing we should do next. So we focused so far on the creation, the design of these reports in Report Builder. Now let's switch over and look at the experience that your end users are going to get when they look at these reports in a browser. And so this is the classic report manager, if you haven't seen it. Again, something in dire need of an update. And I think you'll find that what we've done is radically overhauled it. This is the new reporting services web portal. Pretty cool, huh? Looks very fresh and modern, works across these modern browsers, as I said. Just to prove the point, and for no other reason, I'm using Chrome here to show that. You can see that I've got my KPIs, I've got my mobile reports, I've got my paginated, my traditional paginated reports here as well. Let's open up one of these paginated reports. This is what you traditionally think of, again, as a reporting services report. And again, this is another report that's got some nice modern-looking visuals. This is the tree map, one of the new visuals that we've added. And here what I'm going to do is print this report. Now, the problem is, with previous versions of reporting services, if I were to print this report and I were in Chrome, I'd be stuck at a pretty early step because I would not even see this print icon. Does anybody, I wonder if there's any real RS gurus in the room who know why the print icon would not show up in Chrome. ActiveX. I'm never shocked by the fact that somebody in the room knows that. It's sad that it's so commonly known that reporting services relies on ActiveX for printing because it is the cause of these issues. Number one is actually that installing an ActiveX control requires you to be an admin on your machine. And as you guys probably know, in many organizations, the typical end user isn't an admin on their machine. So now they all call a help desk to say, I need to install something called RS Client Print ActiveX. I don't know what it is, but I need to print my report. And that was a big challenge for enterprises. The other problem was that ActiveX only works in Internet Explorer. So these days, if you're using a modern browser, or really any browser, you're not going to see this control because we don't have ActiveX supported. So what we've done is rewritten the print implementation. We use a more modern approach that's based on PDF and taking advantage of the fact that most of the modern browsers have native PDF viewing and printing capabilities built in, including Chrome, including Edge. So here in Chrome, I'll print this. And not only does it work, I can choose the page size, the page orientation, but well, we will actually hook into Chrome's native print preview experience, which I would argue is better than anything we had in reporting services. I mean, we're not in the business of building print preview experiences. We're in the business of building a BI platform. And Chrome's got a great print preview experience for PDF documents. So hopefully that's a much nicer print preview experience than you had before. And that's enough of Chrome. I'll switch away to Edge here and just show the same report, the exact same one. Again, just notice how consistently it renders across the different browsers. We're rendering this all as pure, standards-compliant HTML5 these days. So you can use your browser of choice. And here, as opposed to printing it, what I'll do is export it. And I'll export it to that new format that we've added, which is PowerPoint. And it very, very quickly, almost instantly, generates a PowerPoint presentation that I can open up. And this is going to be a lot faster starting point than me doing screen clippings and copying and pasting. I'll edit this presentation. It is editable. It lends itself quite well for you to then do further customization. I can do all the typical PowerPoint stuff that you'd expect. I can maybe apply a different theme. All of the charts and gauges, they become individual PowerPoint objects. So I can take this and I can resize it. Or maybe this one, I'll resize it a little bit bigger. The headings, text boxes that you have in your report, they actually become native PowerPoint text boxes. So I can go and customize this and say, Seattle store sales. And just like that, in literally 1 minute, I've got a nice PowerPoint presentation generated from an existing reporting services report. Switch over here. I've got another version of the same report where here you'll notice this button showing up with the Power BI logo. What this allows me to do is use that pinning feature so I can say, you know, this bullet graph that's showing my conversion rate of people coming into my store and then actually buying something, that's a really important business metric for me. I want to monitor that every day on my Power BI dashboard. I don't have to recreate the chart. I don't have to migrate any reports. I just click this. It'll have me sign into Power BI if I've never done that before. And from that point onward, my reporting services account and my Power BI account are kind of linked. They know about each other. I could pin to a dashboard in my own workspace, or I could pin to a dashboard in a Power BI group, maybe for my team. I can pick my dashboard. I can pick how often the tile on my dashboard should be updated. In my case, maybe daily is fine. And I'll just click Pin. And what it will do is render that chart to an image and create a tile out of it and put it on my Power BI dashboard. And also, behind the scenes, create a schedule that's going to keep it up to date on a daily basis. So now it's going to my Power BI dashboard. There is my bullet graph that I just pinned. You can even see the timestamp. And I can go and click this. And if I want to drill down to more details, I can still get back to my original reporting services report. Now, in the short term, that does require VPN or you to be on your company network. In the long term, as I mentioned before, we're looking at in our roadmap, how can we actually bring full, complete reporting services reports to as something you can publish and actually store in Power BI as well. But this is a nice hybrid option as well. Going back to my portal here, I'll just go back to my home page. And here you'll notice that we've also added these KPIs, which is great because before you even open a report, you can keep an eye on important business metrics like customer retention, right? I could just monitor that every day, and then only if it needs investigation or I'm wondering why that number is the way it is, I could click and drill through and open up perhaps a more detailed report. Creating these KPIs is really easy. I just go New, KPI, and it's nice. It gives you a little preview here of what the KPI is going to look like. As you change things, the preview will change. So here, for example, I could say, well, maybe this should be formatted as a currency. The currency is not US dollars, but the currency is euros, and so on. The values, I can simply type them in. So this you might do something like this for a demo, or you might do something like this for, hey, this is a number that changes very infrequently. It changes once a quarter. And rather than me going investing in some heavy automation for this, I'm fine just going in once a quarter and updating this number. But of course, you can bind this to data. So I could go and say, I'll pick a data set field. And again, you can reuse the same data sets that you've already probably built for reporting services and just say, I'm going to pick this total sales data set and pick my sum of sales field. If you have multiple rows in this data set, then you can even choose how should this be aggregated. Should it be the sum? Should it be the average? Should it be the last value? So it's really easy to create a KPI and bind it to data just like that. One of the last things to show is we're actually taking incremental steps toward our roadmap. So we want to add Power BI desktop reports to SSRS. We want to add Excel workbooks. You can actually already start using Power BI desktop on your desktop. It's effectively an on-premises app in that sense. And use reporting services as a way of storing these files and managing security for them. So I can upload my Power BI desktop report here. I can go and say manage security. And in the security settings, I can say, who has access to view this Power BI dashboard, Power BI desktop report, who has access to edit or replace it. You could treat it as essentially a nicer, more visual file share. And when users click this, they're going to actually open, in the short term, Power BI desktop. So as long as they have Power BI desktop installed, they'll be able to get the report open up, and they'll be able to click and interact and slice and dice with the report. Of course, as I said, some short period of time after SQL Server 2016, they'll have the additional ability to just click that thing and open it up in the browser without necessarily having Power BI desktop installed. The web portal so far, we've shown how it's really, we've shown how you consume content in the web portal. The one thing that I wanted to highlight is that the web portal is really where you get everything done. So if you are one of the users who has elevated permissions to actually create content, manage content, you can do that here as well. If I wanted to go to my daily store report, I could click Manage. And in here, all of the stuff that you're used to seeing in Report Manager is still here. I could download the file. I could provide a description to users of what this report is all about. I can go and manage the data sources for this report. And I could even, from here, launch the desktop app to edit this report. Now, previously, this is another one of those things that relied on a little bit of an older technology. If I clicked Edit in Report Builder from Report Manager, it relied on a technology called Click Once, which only really worked well in Internet Explorer. Doesn't really work well in Chrome or Firefox or other browsers. Again, we've modernized that. And here, if I click Edit in Report Builder, it uses a more modern approach, the same one that Office 365 uses to launch Office on your desktop. And this will now launch Report Builder and open the report from the server. This report actually doesn't exist, and it will let me resize my screen, but it actually doesn't exist on my file system at all. I opened it straight from the report server. And the last thing I'll show you here is we've made reporting services and your experience browsing to the reporting services web portal a little bit more personal. Because before, if you're an enterprise and you have reporting services, you can accumulate across an organization that's using it hundreds, if not thousands, of reports. I'd like to tell the anecdote that Microsoft, we have an internal dog food deployment of reporting services where we have accumulated 17,000 reports. 17,000. Now, on the one hand, it sounds crazy, but on the other hand, remember, Microsoft has like 117,000 employees. So it doesn't take much for you to actually get to that point. And they are organized by different teams using the folder hierarchy. But definitely, I'm interested in maybe 17 of those 17,000 reports. I go to my web portal every day, and I see lots of folders that are for teams that have nothing to do with me and that I'm not particularly interested in. You've never really had a personalized experience for that. So now what you can do is you can favorite the KPIs, the mobile reports, the paginated reports, whatever content is most relevant to you. So I am a store manager. I look at this daily store report all the time. I don't want to go hunting for it every day. I can use browser bookmarks or browser favorites, but that doesn't really translate well to a native app on a mobile device. So now I can do it in the reporting services database. It will know that, for me, this is one of the most relevant things, this daily store report. And once I have favorites, whenever I go to reporting services, I'm going to start my day automatically at the favorites page, where it's going to show me at a glance how my business is doing and the reports that I use most often. Thank you. And before we switch away from the web portal, just one quick thing. I can actually apply my organization's brand to this web portal. If I have the right permissions, I can go to Site Settings. I can go to Branding. And there's a whole blog post by Chris that shows you how to build one of these things. It's actually deceptively easy. I go update this brand package. And now I have a portal for the Xbox team at Microsoft. Imagine this with your company's corporate logo, corporate colors. Running a little bit short of time, so the very, very last thing I want to show is just the mobile report publisher. This is a desktop app. You can launch it from the web portal as well, get it installed. And it's really, really easy to create these mobile reports. You just drag and drop these things. This is what I'm talking about the sense that you can start prototyping this. This is just simulated randomized data. Once you figure out what it is that you want, you can go and actually bind it to real data by just going up to the Data tab here, saying Add Data, and then it will help you pick from your server or from just a local Excel file. If we click the server, we can go and browse the data sets just like we did before for the KPIs. But here I can go and build this report. And the nice thing is, here you see these three different layouts, tablet and phone. This is really what allows me to optimize very easily for mobile devices. I can switch to my phone layout. I could say, well, on a phone, it'll be laid out like this. It already knows which controls I've added. I don't got to rebuild them and reconfigure them again. It's just the same controls, but I'm just going to say, like, on a phone, it's going to look like this. And you can preview what it looks like on a phone. With that, I'll just wrap up really quickly, and we'll take a few questions. So as I said, hopefully that gave you a picture of us having built reporting services into a modern enterprise reporting platform again. You've still got your traditional paginated reports. You can still run the ones that you have, and you can still build new ones. And the new ones that you build are going to be better than ever with all those new features that we have. You can also start building these mobile optimized reports as well that respond to the screen as you use it on different devices, or maybe just rotate the screen. And you've got that brand new web portal. It works whatever browser you're using, and all of the content you can access in one place. The call to action that I have for you is pretty much everything that you just saw is already available in preview, even though SQL Server 2016 hasn't shipped in its final RTM version. Go and download the release candidate. I believe you'll get these slides, and you'll have this link. But if you just search for Evaluate SQL Server 2016, you'll end up at the download page. You can go and get this installed. If you just want to play with the mobile report publisher or the new report builder, you can just install those client tools as well and just play with that to get started in about 15 minutes. I definitely encourage you, if you want to keep up to date with news like this, to read the Reporting Services team blog. And if you like what you saw today, feel free to tell us what you liked. Send out a tweet. Follow us on Twitter. That's our account right there. And if you tag it with hashtag SSRS, it's more likely that we'll see your comment and we'll be able to retweet it. So with that, I will wrap up. And thank you very much for coming today. I'll invite my colleague Chris to come up on stage, and we have time for a few questions. Yes, question there.
So when you pin a report to Power BI, just an image?
Yeah, when you pin a report to Power BI, it is just an image. It's being generated on the on-premises side by the report server, and then a subscription runs on whatever schedule you configure to make sure that that image stays up to date. Really, all of the interactivity is when you click that tile, you're going to come back to the full report, and then you can use parameters or use whatever you want. The dashboard is more for you can monitor the value at a glance. Yeah. Yep.
What's the story for migration of old reports and also for encryption? And is there a WinForms report?
Okay, so 3 questions. Migration of old reports. So you're talking about old reporting services reports. You can upgrade your server in place. It's pretty much the same as any previous reporting services release. You can upgrade your server in place, and the reports will continue to work just fine. They will not automatically inherit all of the new modern styles. That will happen for new reports you create going forward, or you could go in and opt into editing them to look more modern using the new features. But our promise to you is that we always will never mess with how you've designed your reports. You can also create a new, if you want to take the opportunity, maybe move to better hardware, you can stand up a new server, migrate your reporting services database over, or just migrate the individual reports over, and they will work just fine. On that note, if you are an existing DataZen customer, we're actually working on a DataZen migration tool to migrate existing DataZen reports as well. That's not available yet, but it will be available later this year. Your second question was about encryption. The story for encryption really hasn't changed. You can encrypt, actually it automatically encrypts for you sensitive information, the most sensitive information like data source, usernames and passwords and credentials and things like that. Reporting services does work with the new always encrypted feature in SQL Server 2016. So you can encrypt the data in the database, and reporting services will have it encrypted. And if you run live and don't cache your reports, then you don't have any additional copy of unencrypted data. The last comment was about the report viewer. So for those who don't know, the report viewer control is almost a separate product from reporting services. It is a developer control that you can embed in your application to host reports. You can do that just simply using an iframe or some more primitive control, but this is a very rich control that provides a lot of programmability. There's no update to them yet, but if you go looking for the latest version, you'll still find the 2015 version. But if you the reason why there's no update is that we're working on SQL Server 2016, the server release. That's got a date where it's got to get wrapped up and go out. Once we finish that, we're going to turn some attention to our developer story and hope to have a rev of the report viewer control. We're going to. Good question. The old report viewer control will display the new reports. Yes, it will not automatically pick up some of the new features like the parameter layout, so it'll lay the parameters out the old way, but it will still work. Sorry, I just wanted to quickly ask, time check here. You've got the next session? OK, so let me take one more question, and then let's head off stage. Yes, you in the back there.
Will you have the ability to share reports with report managers, via email or with other people in the organization?
Well, you have the ability to share reports through Report Manager, through email or other means, sort of like how you can in Power BI. Today, you have the security aspect of it. Like I can say, I'm going to go and grant you access to it. We've made it a little bit easier to go and share with people through a URL, because before, when you modified the parameters in the report, the URL in your browser address bar wouldn't update. Now it updates, so you can, for the most part, just grab the URL from the address bar and send it to somebody else once you've granted permission. In terms of usability, just packaging that up all in more one click is something we're still looking at doing and are likely to do at some point. Yep. So let me head off stage. We'll maybe head out, and then if there are additional questions, we can take them outside.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks.